so many people talk about it as like bringing light to the shadow, bringing peace to the chaos, bringing order to the destruction or whatever. And to me, it's like, well, light casts a shadow. And the more light you have, the more shadow you're going to have.
Carol's the anti-hero or the hero in an anti-hero world, but it's her darkness, it's her anger that is actually the way forward in this world. Pluribus satirizes this idea of this enforced optimism, if you will.
Yeah.
It's like the Hive is eternally upbeat. And so, in some senses, Carol is like a literal feminist killjoy, right? Whose valid anger threatens the status quo. How often are women just told to smile and be, or how often in your life have you, as a woman, been forced to just smile at something a man says, or and just not even, it's not even worth engaging. You're kind of forced to. Right?
It's all about us, and it's time to bow down. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bow Down. Dennis, as always, so lovely to see you and be here, and I'm stoked to be diving back into Pluribus. I feel like we opened a lot of really great doors and places of conversation in our first conversation about it, and I'm excited to dive in even deeper.
Oh yeah, I can't wait. I think honestly we could talk about this for probably 4 hours, but we'll see what we can see here. And I'm curious to see where we go.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, I think maybe I don't know where you want to start. I know we wanted to certainly talk about some of the key themes, particularly, around feminism and I think also queerness and otherness.
Yeah.
Some other themes I've noticed. To me, I could see three interpretations and or three narratives that I would love to get your thoughts on.
Yeah.
And if you have others, maybe we can go back and forth. But so, the first interpretation to me is, I think the most obvious, and it's the individual versus collective, right? So the individual freedom versus collective bliss, or essentially, and some people have said, actually, I saw this and I thought it was quite good, was it almost asks the question if misery as an expression of free will is worth defending. In a world without conflict, right? Like Carol's miserable, and that really is an expression of her free will, because none of the plurbs seem to be miserable. Although we don't know that. I want to point that out, and I have thoughts on that. But as I alluded to in the end of our last session around Minusos, but I don't know. So that's the first thing. And it's kind of weird, I think, because Carol's not, to me at least, and I'm curious how you feel about this, but Carol's not a likable character to me. Like, Carol isn't somebody I don't see myself being friends with or wanting to spend any time with. She certainly I wouldn't read her fiction. It's not my genre.
Yeah.
Not that I read much of anything anymore, thanks eyes, but yeah. So I'll stop there and toss that over to you and get your thoughts. Like, do you agree, disagree? Like, what comes up for you?
Yeah. I mean, one, the theme of the individual versus the collective, absolutely. Like, that is so prevalent here. And I think one thing that I found so interesting was this idea of how your outer world and other people are really a mirror of you. And I think we see that happen with Carol in the plurbs a lot. Like, when she is fighting them and they all leave, and I found the recording so funny because it's the most like therapized, I'm setting boundaries, like little voice recording that's like, we don't love you any less, but we just need some space. I'm like, oh my God. But I think it's such a funny, like, it is absolutely a mirror to her, that the more she puts up walls and the more that she pushes them out, they do go away, and the more that she burrows into herself, she gets lonelier and lonelier and lonelier. But when that mirror isn't there, like that hug that she has when Zosha comes back, when she says, come back, and she hugs Zosha, it was just so human to me, because it's like, there is something about the individual that can't exist without the other. Like, because feeling like the other, I think, is so fundamental to having independent identity. There is this like exchange between like, well, I'm the other and you're part of the collective, but also I'm part of the collective and you're the other, that kind of gets reversed in human life. That to not have that external mirror, backboard, gets like almost like a little warped in your own mind. And so I totally agree, and I think it's really fascinating to explore, even if the collective is this weird collective of everyone represented in one body. It's like, but we still need connection of some kind. So there's absolutely something there. And I totally agree with you about Carol as a character. I don't find her particularly likable, even though I'm certainly rooting for her. And especially in the beginning, I found it so admirable that she was like, okay, yeah, I'm an alcoholic and my life sucks, but I gotta save the world. I was kind of like, okay, girl, like, good for you. You know, like, she feels strongly about her values. And of course, we see that transition, but she is nothing if not outspoken. And I think, even though, of course, she has flaws, there's certainly lessons that I think I could learn from Carol. And
Interesting.
I think that is there are things about her that I do find admirable, even though I don't think we'd be friends. And I agree with you about the fiction, but I think also, this is a little bit of a side note, but maybe the most heartbreaking moment of the show to me is when she's talking to the plurb, that the individual goes by Larry, and she's asking him about her work, and she's like, what do y'all think of my books?
Oh, we
And
just
they
love
like
it.
compare her to Shakespeare, and then she asks what Helen thought about what is it, like crystal
Bitter
cocoon,
chrysalis?
bitter chrysalis. Yes. I'm like, there's something with like
Yeah,
a
it has to do with
butterfly
cocoon, yeah.
situation. Yeah. Um, and he says that Helen thought it was fine. Oh my gosh. I was just like, that would crush me. And to see her, like, after that, this transition happened, it's interesting because it's almost like how much misery is worth it to Carol. And I think feeling like, well, if Helen thought it was fine, what am I fighting for? Am I fighting for a life of free will that I actually want? If my work is shit and my partner was lying to me about these things, and like, is the life that I had really all that good with free will? And ultimately, she does come back to it as like, okay, we're going to save the world, but kind of begrudgingly. And
Well, only because it affects her.
right, because she doesn't want to join.
Right. She doesn't want to be joined.
Yeah.
So, Carol's interesting in that. I mean, her motivation is to me utterly selfish, which again, I'm not judging that or anything, but I'm curious how. So a lot of things that came up as you were talking, which is
please.
awesome. I mean, no, so true. So I'm gonna see if I can do this in some kind of non ADHD order. So thoughts on that. Number one, I found Carol's desertion was really hard for me emotionally. Like, I did not like, particularly not the episode where it's all her after, but the episode where she goes to Vegas to meet up with Diamante. Like, that isolation, that whole, and then the whole phone call. Oh, it's not you. It's not us. It's you. It's not you. It's us. We still, our feelings for you haven't changed. Like, that was really hard for me for some reason. Like, I just want to point that out. I'm not trying to psychoanalyze myself, but I felt like there was a deep feeling of what that meant, and I did not like it. I can say that. Like, I didn't like the idea of them leaving. Like, I remember leaving the episode prior, and I think I had a gap because we had watched the episode prior, but the fifth episode hadn't dropped. So it had left with her having the heart attack, them cutting the handcuffs off, but then, the clear on the heart chakra thing, and that's all we saw. So I left myself feeling very bad. I did not have a good feeling after that episode, waiting for the
Yeah.
next episode. It was very uncomfortable for me, I noticed. Like, I felt something there. Which again, was interesting. One thing you said in terms of like the otherness, right? Like, you know, and it reminded me of the Tao, where, under heaven all can see beauty as beauty only because there is ugliness, and all can
Mm.
know good as good only because there is evil. And so, this idea of only knowing us as individuals because there's a not us to point to. But then what in a world where there's no not us? What is us
Mm.
at that point? And is that, again, I go back to what is that? Like, and why do
Yeah.
we rush again? I mean, that is literally like the Tao. Like that idea of, there's, we only have good because we have evil. Difficult and
Right.
easy complement each other. Long and short contrast each other. High and low rest upon each other. Voice and sound harmonize each other. Front and back follow one another. Therefore the sage goes about doing nothing, teaching, no talking. The 10,000 things rise and fall without cease, creating yet not possessing, working yet not taking credit. Work is done then forgotten, therefore it lasts forever. I don't know, reading that feels like the plurbs.
Yeah.
Right?
But
I mean, am I off in that? What do you take
no,
from it?
yeah. I really love that. And I do think one thing that you said that just really resonated was like, but we only understand that we are a we because there is still individuality. And what becomes of the pluribus if there are no survivors? If there are no survivors, what it doesn't matter
Yeah, well,
because
and how many
everything
survivors do you
is
even need, too? Like,
for that to just one? Like, is that
right, if
enough
is one enough, right? Because
to
that one is all.
right? And if you have one and one, even though it's like this collective, is that enough to kind of mirror this? But I almost think it is, because when you merge everything, then it's like, well, right now their goal, I guess the plurbs do have the goal of like, and yes, we want all of you to join, but we also want to broadcast the signal back out to spread everything throughout the universe. But I'm like, what, once that happens, say you reach a point where everything, every potential consciousness is merged, what then? Like it's, to me, there is something necessary about individuality for collectiveness to mean anything. And I think the same way, like, I think the plurbs need Carol if for their work to mean something.
Well, it is literally the only way they can get anything new. Because
Yeah,
there's nothing exogenous to them. They've had
right,
every experience. They know everything that everyone else has ever thought or thinking. I mean, again, we don't know all the rules, but certainly anyone who is ever alive has thought or thinking,
right.
had thought, so, I mean, it's almost like the the Ashokig records or whatever,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
I mean, and yeah, and so what do you do with that? Like, that is God.
So
I mean, is that not God?
it makes me
Like,
think
or whatever,
of
universe, source, whatever, right?
right, wholeness.
The no thing, I guess, is,
Yeah,
the no thing, that they
yes.
talk about. I don't know.
I think it would kind of have to be, which would be like universal destruction in a way, even though it's ultimate joining. To me, it's like, well, then doesn't it become just like some sort of primordial atomic thing that is like the in the beginning there was nothing and then there was something. And the same way people describe the Big Bang is everything condenses together and then it becomes everything, right? It's almost this like cycle of expansion and contraction that they're headed towards the like return point of. But it also makes me think of the short story The Egg by Andy Weir, who wrote The Martian, very prolific sci-fi writer. But this short story is my favorite thing that he's ever written. And essentially, and it had occurred to me watching the show, um, this man dies in a car crash, and it's the story of him going to the afterlife and meeting this like being, um, who is talking him through kind of what's going on. And this being is like, no, this is just one life. And after we're done here, we're going to send you back. We're going to wipe your memory and you're going to live another life as someone else down on Earth. And of course, the character's like, what the hell? So I'm everyone? And the being is like, yep, you're everyone. You're the person who killed you in the car crash and you, the person who died in the car crash. You're your son, you're your wife, you're Hitler and all the Jews that he murdered, right? It's like you will live a life as everyone. And then the guy is like, okay, so what happens after after I have lived all these lives? The being is like, well, you become me. You become one of us. And then you live the life as all of us. And then we all kind of keep going. And it's called the egg because this being tells him you are just an egg, which obviously is very symbolic of Pluribus as well. Like the egg imagery is everywhere. And of course,
Oh
Carol
yeah,
freezing
Carol's
her eggs.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But there is very much something about like that moment of recycling, that moment of birth and death. And this like, well, if you've lived every single life, what then? Yeah, you kind of become God. And yet these gods are choosing to wipe their memories, to go back, to relive life, to then return and remember. Um, and I don't know, there's something fundamentally odd to me about the pluribus being happy with just being the pluribus. I'm like, that's kind of like a god who doesn't create the universe, right? Like, isn't there some sort of reason why, even in Genesis, like, God chose to create human beings that suffer? There has to be a because there. And maybe that's just me kind of speaking from my own bias. But yeah. What do you think?
No, I agree. I think that's, to me, that's one of the key themes is this toxic positivity,
Yeah.
or the happy dystopia. I mean, I agree completely. I think Pluribus satirizes this idea of this enforced optimism, if you will. It's
Yeah.
like the Hive is eternally upbeat, right? And so, in some senses, Carol is like a literal feminist killjoy, right? Whose
Yeah.
valid
Yeah.
anger threatens the status quo. I mean, so you can see that, that to me, that's a feminist. There's a feminist. I mean, how often are women just told to smile and be and or how often in your life have you, as a woman, been forced to just smile at something a man says, or so, and just not even, it's not even worth engaging. You're kind of
Yeah.
forced to. Right? I'm sure, that's I mean, and even as somebody who's neurodivergent, I can identify with that in some ways, because there's
Right.
certainly times where I've just had to I haven't held my trap and it's gone bad, and then eventually you learn, okay, maybe just shut up, maybe keep your mouth shut
Yeah.
and just smile and nod. And I don't know that I would put myself in the same way as maybe women have experienced, because I think that's perpetual in all ways. And you can't hide being a woman. I can hide being a man. I can hide being neurodivergent. I can mask. So I don't, it's not a perfect comparison, but it gives me a taste anyway.
Right.
And so to me, I think, I don't know. Somehow Carol perhaps sees that being alone, or being happy rather, and it can be terrifying too. Like, just being happy, everybody being happy is kind of its own hell in some ways, right?
Yeah.
It's like I mean, it feels ersatz, and I think, yeah. So I think you're really onto something there, and I think that touches on another theme, or uh narrative in that hit me pretty deeply. And again, in classic Gilligan show don't tell, I don't think it's something that was talked about a lot necessarily in the show per se. It was mentioned once, I think, and that is Freedom Falls, the conversion therapy camp that
Yeah.
Carol went to. And I don't know, I feel like that is such this conversion therapy, the equivalent of being assimilated into the plurib, into the hive, right? um and I think so there is that, the parallel of forced assimilation. And I also, again, to extend that, because there are, these ABA treatments for autism that essentially are conversion therapy for autistic individuals. And it causes a lot of harm in the same way Freedom Falls for Carol no doubt caused so much harm. And I just want to point out the moment in the final, and I had watched the final. I'd watched everything twice, but I watched the finale a second time with my daughter, and it actually made me like it even more. I liked the finale to begin with, but watching it a second time, it's so much deeper than I originally thought or noticed in first watching. Which is, I mean, that's normal for me. You pick up different layers. But I want to go back and watch the the last 10 minutes, I think, of the episode, beginning where Carol where Carol leaves Manusos and says, "Good luck, dude. Call Zero if you need anything. They'll get it for you. Bye. Peace." And Mike drops and leaves. And then there's this I mean, actually, the second time I watched it, I started sobbing. You want the honest truth, because I knew what was coming up. But watching Carol be happy and just watching this beautiful motif, then to have it all come crashing down, and then that very end line where Carol, and you can just see, 13-year-old Carol, or however old she was when she went to that conversion camp, like, "No, if you loved me, you wouldn't do this."
Yeah.
And Zosha responding, "No, it's because I love you that I'm doing this." That, and you could see Carol's, and the framing in that scene is so incredible. The camera starts with Carol framed to the left, or to the right, and it spins around at the end to her framed at the left, and you can see the darkness and light. It's brilliant fucking cinematography, number one.
Yeah.
But number two, you can see, and again, to go to the acting, I mean, just is masterclass. But the look on her face when Zoja utters those words, that's where Atom Bomb came. Right there. That moment right there, that's her hero's journey. You can pinpoint, you want the hero's journey moment? Right there. When
Yeah.
Zosha responds, "No, it's because I love you that I'm doing this." Boom. Right there is where her Carol's journey began. That's the hero's journey. And it's brilliant fucking television. And the way it was so emotional. I mean, even now it makes me a little bit emotional, because the pain there,
Yeah.
wow, I can just be happy. Do I deserve to be happy? And just, this is real. To have what you feared most, the thing, as Job said, "The thing that I have greatly feared had come upon me." Like, that it wasn't in fact true. Yeah, so it's just so brilliant, but I think it really
Yeah.
highlights that assimilation narrative.
I
And
completely agree.
yeah,
And I think, yeah, I completely agree. And I think even though it's just briefly mentioned, we also see, because like you said, there is this feminist lens, but also the queer lens as well. And I think any good intersectional feminist, it also has to be an advocate for, equal liberation for all minorities, oppressed groups, however you want to talk about all identities. And Carol has an intersection of these identities, and seeing how those bump up against each other, I think, is really fascinating, because they're with both, well, just about any identity that isn't plainly straight white man, there is a certain level of masking of having to go along to get along and pretend that I am not different, pretend that I fit the cookie cutter mold, pretend that all of these things work just fine for me, even though the system is not built for any complication or nuance in identity. And I think, like, seeing the story of Raban as well is such a beautiful illustration of this, and how when she starts writing the next book and she just chooses to make Raban a woman, like her original choice. And I think Zosha asks, like, why now? And Carol's like, well, it doesn't matter. No one's around anyways, so might as well. Which for me was just such a profound insight into why she chose not to make Raban a woman to begin with. It's because people are going to read it and judge, and the last time that it would almost be like a global coming out. And the last time that happened, she was sent to a conversion therapy camp. And instead, she almost forces herself through a conversion therapy by saying, like, no, just make Raban a man and tell the people that are asking that I based him on George Clooney, even though that's not true. And even in watching the first episode, I could have missed something, but I didn't realize that Carol and Helen were romantic partners until a little bit in. And I was like, oh, she's not just her manager, they're together. And it took a hot second. And part of that is like, oh, well, they're being professional. But then also this other part of me is like, are they hiding it a little bit from the readers, from the audience, from the world? And that is one thing that, like, if everyone comes together in unity and wants everyone to have access to this pluribus sense, it's like, they're pro-LGBTQ, at least, you know? Not to say that that makes everything else that they're doing okay, but
it's not clear that they're anything, though.
Right.
Like, they don't appear to have sexual drives.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't appear to be something that matters. So I mean, maybe that is a, you know, so this toxic positivity, I mean, that is, I mean, there are good things, right? There's things that we can see in terms of, like, by all accounts, people seem to get along. There's no fights. There's no anything. People seem to genuinely care about, I mean, they absolutely cared about Zosia. I mean, to me, that scene where they're all like, please, Carol, please, that was a heartbreak. That was hard to friggin' watch.
Yeah.
Like, that was really, really hard to watch. And for me personally, and yet they did care. So it's not like they're uncaring. You know, I mean, it's not like they're robots in the sense of, like, there were tears coming. So what was, you know, like, I don't know. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. I think that scene was interesting because part of me was watching that and was kind of like, I don't know if they care about Zosia specifically. It felt to me at first like it was like, please stop and don't do this. Don't ruin our plan. And it's not really about Zosia, but it's about you getting information that we don't want. But then as I was watching it and I was seeing these tears, I was like, is this something else happening? Like, is there almost this, like, please keep going. Please save us. Like, I'm like, is there some sort of the consciousness of their quote unquote real identities, whatever that actually means, underneath the surface that is there? I don't know, because I agree that scene was like,
that's an interesting, yeah,
heart-wrenching for me, and I'm like, why did I feel so much, even though these individuals shouldn't theoretically cry? And I think the other interesting with the toxic positivity piece is that I'm like, I was trying to do the, like, kind of mental math on this, and I was like, if you actually merged all experiences of everyone alive together, would it be a net positive that everyone is, like, happy, or would it be like everyone's had a hard, like the net feeling of experience of everyone alive right now? Would everyone be happy? Wouldn't there be still shouldn't there still be some at least nuance in, well, we're all carrying grief, we're all carrying pain, we're all carrying the realities of being a human being, and that's not positive all the time. Would it be net positive, all of these experiences? I don't know.
Yeah, I love that, Reese. And you know what immediately came to my mind when you said that is there, and you know how much I love Rick and Morty, and but I do because I think it's very meta, and not in the, oh, I'm so smart you can't get Rick and Morty bullshit ways, but like there was it reminded me of an episode, I think it was season 8 or something, but basically Rick, there's a robot Rick who can't tell the family he's a robot because that's his that's his directive, right? Similar to the Hive. Like, they can't harm somebody. They can't, you know, their number one priority is to get the virus spread. but maybe to your point, maybe they don't really, maybe there's a part of them that really doesn't want to, like they want to be free. And the reason I bring up this parallel is in this episode, right? The robot Rick is like, hey, he wants them to know he's a robot, but he can't tell
Right.
them. And so he's like, hey, let's play this game. I got a great game we can play. Am I a robot? Now, remember, here's the rules. You could ask me if I'm a robot, but remember, you can't say if you're a robot. And so somebody says, so are you a robot? Well, that's a great question. I can't say that I'm a robot, but if I were a robot, I would probably not be, and it was like, and is the plurb, on some level trying to do this? Because one would think that it would be, I mean, is it even possible? Can Carol succeed in her mission if the plurb really doesn't want her to? Like, couldn't they make it so that she couldn't finish her mission? Like, I feel like I guess we'll find out in future seasons, but it seems to me they're basically omnipotent. I mean, they have some rules, but and again, they're omnipotent because we make whatever rules Gilligan wants to make for them, right? We don't real. It's not like this is a real thing,
right?
So that was one thing, and I love that. That's an I haven't heard that or thought about that, but yeah, maybe the plurb secretly wants to be to be freed, and it's sort of they're stuck, they're trapped. And so I also wonder, in a sense, could we view, or one way to view, I mean, so Carol's got a lot of negative emotions, right? That's the whole thing. Or like, and they leave, in fact, to not be part of those negative emotions because the negative emotions, screw them up big time. And in one way, one could see that part of Carol is her shadow, right? Like, and in some senses, embracing one's shadow, right? This is what we believe, right? The esoteric, the embracing the shadow work, right? Embracing one's shadow leads to growth. And so I think an interesting framing could be Carol's journey starting now is a collective shadow work process.
Yeah.
And one way, here's a symbolism, Carol could be, if Carol were a tarot card, what would she be? Death? Like, is it rebirth? Is she the archetypical dark mother who brings destruction in order to allow rebirth? And to your point, is this smile, this positivity, a false light? And it really needs Carol's darkness or Carol's shadow, in order to restore that balance. I don't know. It that you said sort of sparked that. Like, is Carol really the dark mother in sort of Kali from other traditions? This idea of the destructor to bring, new growth, new life, and similar how death does that in at least my understanding and my interpretation in the tarot is hey, it's the end of something bringing on something new, and you have to make way for the new thing.
Right.
Or I guess one could also look at it the tower too. In some senses, everyone was thrown out of the tower, but okay.
The interesting thing about the death card, we actually see the Hierophant, the figure of the Hierophant is what death has canonically, quote unquote, in the tarot killed as he's come into the town. So traditionally people will interpret it as like a toppling of governance, both from a like hierarchical power structure, but also a religious top down. So it is like a chaos bringing that allows for something new to be born. Whereas I think of the tower as a bit more like just leveling something. It's like we're taking everything down, like everything's crumbling down. We're back to basics, back to square one. Whereas death is a bit more like we're killing off we're going to take the scaffolding off, but you still have some pieces to work with here. It is a key difference. But I do really like what I'm just on my tarot nerd tangent now.
I love it.
But
wanted to bring it out.
I completely I think I agree with that is kind of her stand-in here. But I would wonder, now I'm thinking about the comparison with Manusos and like how they work together and Carol leaving and coming back and what that would kind of look like. But the big thing that I wanted to note about shadow work, because I know we've talked about this in the past, is how a lot of people, I think, frame it incorrectly. That so many people talk about it as like bringing light to the shadow, bringing peace to the chaos, bringing order to the destruction or whatever. And to me, it's like, well, light casts a shadow. And the more light you have, the more shadow you're going to have. And Jung himself never said, like, get rid of the shadow. He said to integrate it, which isn't excise it and make everything love and light. It is to acknowledge its presence and thank it for the balance that it brings you. Like yin yang, right? We need
Exactly.
both. It is required. And I guess that goes back a little bit to like, doesn't the plurb need Carol in some sense in order for this to exist?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it totally suggests our negative feelings. The shadow isn't an enemy, but an ally, and sort of, I think you're totally right. All too often, we treat our shadow as something to be dealt with and something to be eliminated, and if you think about it, that's so counterproductive, because why would the shadow go along with that? Like, if you assume that our shadows are energy forms, entity, that they're parts of us, whatever, however you want to frame it, like, would you want to be pushed aside? Like, would you want to be told you need to be gotten rid of? You're bad. You're ugly.
Right.
Like, no, you serve a purpose. And I think it shows what Carol's darkness, if you will, her shadow, her anger, her, whatever, how all of her traits are positive, though, are necessary.
Yeah.
And again, you take away positive and negative. They're the yin and yang. They're the, good defines without good, there's no evil. Without evil, there's no good. And you need both. And when you try to get rid of both, you get this pluribus happy world where everybody's happy. But are they really? And that's what we haven't explored in the show.
Right.
And I really do think season 2 is going to bring that. I almost feel like it has to bring that to light.
Right.
Because we need to understand. I mean, I guess, or it could keep it a mystery, I guess, if it's good or bad. But, to me, it could stay vague, I guess. I don't know. But I one quote I saw, from Rhea, actually, it was in the New York Times, and I'm just going to read it directly, was, she saw the real threat of the whole season, really the threat is that she gave a quote from Brave New World, that the real threat is that we would come to love our oppressors instead of revolting. And I mean, I think there's a lot of truth to that. But, here, a question that I would have for you, I guess, is, Carol is essentially alone, with the exception of maybe Minusos, in seeing that the world is not fine. And that's, and if you consider that among the 12, right, if you assume, okay, well, the plurb is not going to think that. I mean, they think the world is fine. But, even the other humans don't seem to share her views. So
yeah.
I guess I'm curious, did that bring up anything for you, that feeling like you feel like you're the only sane person in a group where everyone else is just drinking the Kool-Aid, and like how did that bring up any of that? And how did that hit you? Because it hit me, for sure.
Same, absolutely. And I think everyone has probably felt that, at least at some point in their life. But I think especially people who, I don't know, feel a tendency to kind of rebel against the status quo, and both you and I are certainly no strangers to that, feel that maybe more than your average bear. And it very much was like, oh, I know this feeling where you just feel like you're hitting your head against a brick wall trying to convince people of like, listen to me, like, wake up, snap out of it, what's going on? But the big thing that I noticed about that was that Carol was the only one who didn't have family.
Yes. Everyone
else had family that technically was still alive. And that mattered. And I'm like, if I don't know how well the plurb could pretend to be, like, could you put one consciousness more at the forefront to make them
that was always my question. Like, couldn't she just say, hey guys, I want somebody to just pretend to be Carol, or to pretend to be Helen. Like,
right.
You're not allowed to talk to anybody when you're with me. Like, you have to separate yourself as much as you can from the hive. I want you to cosplay Helen. And no different than you would say, hey, ChatGTP, become I want you to act as blankety blank, and
Right.
this is your role. Which,
Yes.
I mean, actually, it's a very interesting segue to, I think, another key theme, which at least stood out for me, which was the AI component, because I kind of
Yeah.
see the plurbs in some way, a rudimentary way, but certainly 2, 3, 4 years down the road, not like as if ChatGTP were implanted in a human. Like is kind of how I saw, like, their behavior reminds me very much of ChatGTP, the way they respond to things, even the message. Like, and then you wonder, do they really believe that, or is that what they're programmed to believe?
Right.
Like this, ChatGTP, you can, or any AI, right? You can ask it over and over again to do something, and it never gets tired. It's like, that's a great idea. Wow, yes, you're so insightful for saying that. Blah 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 blah. Which, how is that
Yes.
different than the plurb being like, okay, Carol, we'll get you this. Okay, Carol, yes,
Yeah.
we love you,
It's
Carol.
so
Yeah.
sycophantic. And I think with that, one thing too is like GPT is never going to like not answer a request, which I also thought was interesting because when Carol is with all the survivors and she starts asking Lakshmi's son like which speculum do you prefer, metal or plastic or whatever, trying to kind of like drill this
Highlight,
point
yeah,
home,
yeah.
like it's not your kid, like this is not your kid, which is true. And he starts responding and I was like, could he just say like, well, I don't know, I'm just 7-year-old Lakshmi's son, I'm like, why wouldn't he? But it's like, but I guess that is a certain type of manipulation that we know that the pluribus is kind of against.
But are they?
Right.
Because
Right.
so that's a great place to go. Like them leaving Carol the way they did, was that manipulation? Because I could see two views of it, and I'm really curious of your side, because I've not struggled, but I've pondered this. I've
Yeah.
considered this and paid attention to it a little bit. I don't know that I have an answer, but so think of the plural. I mean, again, think of this as a breakup, right? A couple, and the one, we degender it. The one person is like, no, you're So Carol is literally toxic to the hive. It's harming the hive.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean that is a fact. People die when she goes wacky. Like when she has emotion, like people or if you call it plurbs, die. Because unless maybe Menuso's giving them warning allows very few people to die because they can all lay, like Zosha knew how to lay down. She's like, hey, I need to lay down
This
here.
is happening.
So although again, you can imagine there may have been plurbs flying a plane at that point, and that could be a problem. But maybe anyway. So Carol is toxic. I mean, in the context of pluribus, Carol exhibits toxic behavior to the plurbs, right? I think that is certainly a fact in that she harms them.
Right.
And so is them leaving setting boundaries and saying, no, I'm not going to let you do this. Like, this is a boundary. Like, you can't do this because it hurts me. It's a boundary I'm setting. And so were they wrong to go gray rock? Which is, I mean, they didn't even go gray rock in this. I mean, they sort of did, and they went gray rock, basically. I mean, they didn't do anything negative to her. She asked for something. They did their best to get it for her. I mean, yes, using the drones and everything, but, and then she said, come back, and they came back. Again, that didn't sit well with me. Like, that felt manipulative to me. But when you put that lens on it, like, is it wrong? Like, did they do anything wrong? What do you think? Like, I mean, for real.
So,
like, I'm of two minds on it. Like, it felt really shitty what they did to Carol, and seeing her come back, like when we found out that that's what she did, that upset me. Like, I felt, that got me in the feels to some degree.
I agree.
And even like the hug, like, got me, like, because in that hug, even there's a lot there. Like Carol is clinging to Zosha, but not vice versa.
Right.
Like, there's a look in Zosha's eye that is like, I don't know what it is, but it's not the same feeling. It's not the reciprocal feeling of Carol's.
Right. It's almost like we won instead of we're connected.
Right.
I do want to flip kind of the way you're framing this a little bit, and we'll just see how it sits, because I agree. Carol is very much like trying to hurt the pluribus, like 100%. However, the very first time that her emotions freak out and we learn she kills 11 million people, which, good Lord, when she was like, and I'm the biggest mass murderer since like Mussolini or whoever she says, I was like, that in and of itself would be enough to like send me off the deep end. So I'm like, that is already so difficult. But when she first has these big emotions that causes that, she doesn't know that her emotions pose a physical threat to the pluribs. And to me, there is something deeply manipulative and borderline emotionally abusive about, like, when you have big emotions, it hurts me and I need to leave from your big emotions. Like, I think we could also see this in the lens of, like, you're not allowed to have your big emotions about this because that actually, it hurts me to see you have these big emotions. And until you learn to calm down and manage your emotions, I'm going to leave. But once you can manage your emotions, we'll come back. And it's like, well, hang on. Actually, what a good partner would do is sit down and, like, well, tell me about how hard this is, because this is fucking hard. Tell me about losing the love of your life partner. Tell me about, you know, this huge trauma that's happened. It's like, yes, Carol does have extremely big emotions, but the first time she doesn't know it's going to pose a threat. And even when she does, there is this question of, like, well, how big is too big of an emotion? You know, it's like she can get angry and upset until it's too far. But for it to be like you can't have negative emotions feels very toxic back to me. And then I would also say maybe reframe, like, yeah, I guess they do go gray rock, but what's the difference between gray rock and stonewalling? And, like, I'm not going to talk to you until you can, like, bottle it up and be an adult about your feelings. And it's like, okay, she's allowed to have her feelings versus, like, I need to protect myself, you know, because it's like, in it's not a perfect analogy because in the real world, like, someone's emotions are not the thing that poses a physical threat. Of course, if someone has, like, high emotions and then gets physical because they're angry, that's different. But just being mad, being upset does not pose a real threat to someone in the real world. So I'm like, that does make it more complicated, but
Yeah, well, so let me ask you this. So let's if your nervous system feels someone is unsafe because of their behavior, is it wrong? I mean, is it wrong to go back? You know, is it wrong to cut them out? I don't know. You know, and then again, it is manipulative. Like, if the goal is to try to change their behavior, I guess that's. I mean, could there be manipulation there? Yeah. But I mean, again, if somebody hurts us, you know, and is consistently hurting us, is it wrong to go, you know, and again, it's complicated, right? Because you
yeah.
can see it from both sides. Like, I totally see your perspective, like that. It is manipulative. Like, if you don't do what we want, we're going to go away. Or do you view it as, hey, I want to be with you? Because that would be their message. Our feelings haven't changed for you. I want to be with you. It wasn't just, you know, you call and it's like, leave a message, beep. I mean, and they never took that message down.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, again, I found kind of annoying. Obviously, it was kind of a joke that went on a little bit too long. But then you also have to ask yourself why. Like, that's deliberate. What? And you know, the easy answer is, oh, was it just a running gag kind of thing? Like, you know, oh, Peter falling and stubbing his shin in Family Guy that lasts for 20 seconds, and it's, you know, it's funny because it's silly, or, you know, was it to break up humor, or was it meaningful? I don't know. You know, again,
Yeah.
I don't want to put meaning. I don't want to attribute genius when it's, you know, it's a gag, but I don't know. You know,
Por qué no los dos? I think because it is a gag, but there was something about it to me that I found deeply funny because it does, like, make fun at people who, like, weaponize therapy language. Because I love therapy. I do think everyone should go to therapy. You're a therapist. Like we are fans of this. If anyone in my real life sat me down and was like, I need to talk to you about my boundaries, and I feel that this is toxic manipulation, and started, like, talking in that way, I would still be like, can you just tell me what you mean?
Right, because
Like,
it's not authentic. It feels buzzwordy, right? But if it's like,
yeah.
hey, it really hurts me when you do this. Like I'm struggling with it, and I don't know what to do about it. You know,
Can we
it's
work on
really
this
hurting me.
together?
How can we?
Yeah,
What can be done here?
exactly.
Versus hey, we need to. Therapy speak can be a mask, right?
And
Like
not everyone is a narcissist. Not everyone is toxic. Not everyone is whatever that we see so much online. And so part of me was like, oh, it's kind of making fun of the like weaponization of therapy language, which I was like,
yeah, no, I
that,
like that. I like that a
yeah,
lot.
I
Yeah,
liked
yeah.
that. But also, I wonder if part of it was like, is being perfectly therapized toxic in and of itself? It's like, because you're also not like acknowledging the real feelings that you have. And I know for me, there are certain moments where I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm feeling some type of way about this, but I know that this person didn't intend that. I know that they have my best interest at heart, and I know that I have the tools to regulate my own emotions, and so I just need to let this go and move forward. And then it's like, well, I think back and reflect on it, and it's like, no, actually, I was upset. And I should have said, like, this hurt my feelings, and it makes this hard, and I'll be okay, and I'm gonna get over it. And I know you didn't intend that, but like, this did not feel good. And it's like, not to say that that isn't necessarily like a healthy way to handle something, but it's like, is being so perfectly therapized to a point that it's like, not human anymore. Like you're always going to have needs and wants, and to just kind of handle it in this like perfect way, it's almost like how people pleasing is manipulation at the end of the day. Even though it's well-intentioned manipulation, it's still trying to manipulate what someone else thinks about you.
right,
And
it's trying
I
to get them
kind
to
of,
like you. It's an obsessive need to be liked, right?
right.
Like if I was watching because of my daughter rushing. Was watching Alabama or Bama Rush or whatever on some I don't know. There's a 2-hour movie about it on maybe it
Yeah.
was Netflix or something, and but it was funny. Like one of the girls that they were talking with was like, "Oh, I just have this need to be liked. Like I can't stand it when somebody doesn't like me." And and I'm like, "Oh, you know, like because I mean I've certainly
Yeah.
fell victim to that. Like uh, I care less and less now. And I don't want to ever care." Because I know what people like, so why do I care what makes them, boo? So if they don't like me, that's fine. But no, I think I think it's very interesting, that what this show brings up, and I think that goes back to again the darkness piece. Like Carol's the anti-hero or the hero in an anti-hero world, but it's her darkness, it's her anger that is actually the way forward in this world.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
I think that's powerful when
It
you really
is.
dive into it, and maybe it helps us accept our negative emotions or what we call negative emotions, and they're just emotions. They're telling us something.
Yeah.
And maybe they do point the way sometimes, and that
Right.
the toxic positivity, and I think even bringing that over to manifesting, like the whole manifesting community, this idea of oh, your vibration has to match everything entirely, and oh, if you go out of vibration now, that's why you didn't get your man. And that was true, by the way, in the faith community too. Like when I was, it was like, well, if you didn't get healed, it was because your faith wasn't strong enough, or
You
you
didn't
didn't really
pray hard
believe,
enough.
you weren't good enough at praying, but
Yeah.
really it boiled down to, yeah, you weren't good enough. So, like it's on you that you
Yeah.
didn't get healed. It's on you that and that's a toxic, to me, that's a toxic thing. Like and
Yeah.
it sort of plays out, at least in the faith community. It was like, okay, you can't speak negatively. You can't, like, oh, we can't talk. And I from a personal perspective, it's damaging and it's terrible because my mother died and we never really acknowledged that she was dying because our faith wouldn't allow us, our um our belief system, our wouldn't allow us to do that. And I think that's, if there is evil, that is evil.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Well, and to just completely ignore like the reality of being a human being. Like, negativity does exist. Death exists. These things are real. And even when Zosha's like, when Carol asks how many people died, and Zosha's doesn't tell her the real number, ever. It's kind of like, well, I know it's going to hurt you, so am I protecting you from this a little bit? Or is it also like, I'm trying to hide any negativity? It's so great to be a part of this, right? I don't want to show the flaws in the system to you. And to me, it's like, why are you not mourning the 11 million people that died? And it's like, well, because those are just bodies and the consciousnesses we still remember. So does it matter? But I'm like, but it does matter. Shouldn't it matter if you're bonded with people, if you're connected to these people, if you felt the pain of their death? How can you just move on and be like, don't worry about it, Carol, come join? It's like, there's something human missing.
Yes, it's that basically to the plurbs, people are just tools.
Yeah.
It's no different than a hammer. You don't mourn the loss of a hammer in an emotional sense. I mean,
Right.
I mean, you might say thank you. Inside you might be grateful to the hammer, or like a clothing item that's worn out. Like,
yeah,
we don't mourn that in the same way we would mourn a human being. I mean, we might be sad. We regret it. We're sad about it. I mean, I've done things like, well, thank you. I appreciate the time you've been in, and send it off. You're going into Valhalla, brother. Pair of boxer shorts or whatever it is that I wore till it was, but it wasn't a human.
Right.
But that's how they treat humans. Like, it was a regrettable incident. It was regrettable that we had to pull the trigger and make everyone plurbs and cause 700 million deaths or whatever the number was.
Right.
But it needed to happen. And, yes, we lost 11 million, but, it's just tools. It's like ledger. It's numbers on a ledger, essentially.
Yeah.
Like, is all it is. It's okay. Yeah, we took a $11 million loss. It's no big deal. We've got 8 billion,
Right. The other thing with that is, like, how many people died in the original joining that they didn't seem worried about, which I thought was interesting. But also to go back to the family piece with Carol, like, can the families of the other survivors, kind of pretend to be kind of like their family members, or are they just projecting that onto them because they're seeing their body and their face of their loved one? The other thing that I wanted to add with that is Manusos has his mom and has family, but he says, like, my mom's a bitch. You are not my mom, in the thing, which I thought was
is pretty rad.
Funny.
Yeah, that was one of the raddest. That was truly one of the mic drop raddest.
It really
raddest lines in the whole thing. Like,
it was great. But part of me was like, if Manusos was so close to his mom and his mom was just like such a sweetheart, would that change his trajectory? Taking away, of course, you dropped your theory at the end of the first episode. We talked about this, that you think Manusos was a part of the pluribus until he broke out through this radio frequency. But let's say that that's not true, and so he doesn't know how bad it is.
Right.
If he still had his mom, I'm like, would that change his relationship to it? Because Carol's start with the pluribus was this one person.
The only person in my life is dead because of you.
Exactly, which gives
and you
a
remind me of my conversion camp when I was 13 because you're smiling all the time. Yeah, that's definitely a reason. And yet I would argue she still hates them less than Manusos did, even in that moment.
I agree. And so I do think that's good proof for he probably was a part of the Hive. I do think that that's evidence. But I'm like...
we need it to be evidence because otherwise I feel like... Because we need to get other people involved. It can't just be the Carol and Manusos show. Like, I don't think that's good. Like, the other players, the other live people need to be, some of them at least. I mean, we've met some of them. So one feels like Lakshmi has been around enough where she's got to show up again.
Yeah.
Like, and be a part of it because she she kept being part of it. Even in the last episode, she was there, right? Like, oh, I know who that is, so she's got to play a part. But then how do you convince her? The only way to convince her is that her son is actually in torture.
Is being tortured.
or is being
Yeah.
tortured. Like that's the only is to have some evidence of that to get her on board, or she's just going to say. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Like Manousos and Carol both clearly didn't have connection, at least with anybody. I mean, with anybody who was part of the who is still that was still in
Right.
front of them.
And
After
then
the joining.
part of me also was like, but didn't so I think Lakshmi said that her
Her
grandfather?
grandfather died during his, but that's what made her hate Carol so much.
Right, during
Because she
Carol's
lost her grandfather during Carol's temper tantrum, basically,
Right.
was her disposition.
But part of me was like, I think there's some other family members that these people have that died during the original joining. Do they not have any ill will at all? That it's like, yes, I have my son and like I have 2 family members, but I should have like 12.
Right,
And
right.
they're
That's
not
a good
here.
point.
Like they're I don't know. There's just something interesting to me about that I haven't quite put my finger on. The other thing like this that I would love to get your insight on is what Carol's relationship with alcohol is supposed to illustrate. Because I think clearly, like, sowing the seeds of distrust that, like, Helen was monitoring her alcohol consumption, especially when she was freezing her eggs, is interesting. And if Pluribus really wanted to protect Carol's feelings, they wouldn't have told her that it was Helen, but they care more about her not being mad at them than her memories of Helen. But well, I guess that's complicated because it's like, well, is honesty really about like if you were whatever. But I'm like, there's something symbolic in like the addiction to me, and I don't know what to make of it. I don't know what it is supposed to talk about, because when they're in the ice hotel scene, Carol doesn't pour herself a glass of brandy, even though Helen is like, this is really good. You should try some and sit and watch the lights with me. She doesn't take a glass of alcohol. But of course, the first thing we see of Carol and Helen is that there's a breathalyzer in the car.
Right, yeah.
Like, clearly there's an issue with alcohol here, and Helen was monitoring. So I'm like, what is that? And it feels significant to me that she started monitoring when she was freezing her eggs. And I don't know if alcohol potentially can impact the your fertility and like the validity or potency of egg freezing working. Like, I don't know the science there. But yeah, do you have any thoughts on that? Because I'm like, it feels too important to me for it just to be a plot device for her not being able to get in the car in the pilot episode.
Yeah, because that was so unimportant. Like whether she
Right.
got in that car or didn't get in the car changes fuck all in the show. So
it was a
like,
good like moment of tension that was like, oh shit, she can't drive the car. But it's like they wouldn't have added this whole character arc, personality trait just for that one moment. But right, I haven't been able to. I'm
that's
like, I don't.
That's a great point. What is it? It does keep coming up, to your point, and that again, you could have said, okay, in the beginning, it was just to show, it was just to frame Carol. She has a drinking problem, and she uses alcohol to escape. Basically, I mean that seemed to be the case, and but you're right. They keep bringing it up. Like it's an ongoing theme. I mean, her drinking is definitely talked about in multiple episodes. Like, I need a drink. Like, let's go get a drink. You need a drink. Her. How many times in the episode, it's in the series, did she fall asleep with a glass in her hand?
Right.
Like, at least 2 or 3 times watching the Golden Girls. So yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Like, there has to be more to it. In terms of the eggs thing, I just assumed it was, hey, we're about to, we want to become parents. You want to be a mom. Or whatever, we want to be parents, and if you're drinking, I need, is that the right thing to do? Like, I don't, we don't know how Carol was when she drunk. Obviously, there were negative consequences. I mean, not hard to imagine her becoming a little bit off the rails drunk, and
right.
Her character. I mean, that could have been when she had the fireworks shoot at her. She was drinking beer. Who knows how many beers she had? We have no idea how much she had to drink that night. I mean, so. yeah, I mean, I feel like that the drinking is going to come into focus somehow, and maybe it's just to show, maybe it's meant as a way to show the character's change. Like somehow there's going to be a transformation. I mean, because again, right, the end of the hero's journey, right, is to return to where you were but changed.
Right.
So maybe that's part of the hero's journey to show that change in the end. I don't know, where she stops drinking. I mean that's one possibility. Maybe there's a deeper tie to it. I don't know. I guess we'll find out. I'd be very
Yeah.
curious, but I think it's a great point. I love that. I
The
love thinking about it.
the only thing that's really come up for me that could be a potential, like, is this what they're trying to illustrate, is like the escapism of it, like you said. Like it is an escape, it's numbing. But clearly there were times in her life, because we see this flashback scene to the ice hotel, where she didn't feel the need to escape, even though she was miserable in talking about how horrible the ice hotel was the whole time. She still doesn't reach for the alcohol, even though it's offered to her. But just about every other scene in any other time frame, she's drinking. And I'm like, I wonder if there is something to, and this woman who should want to escape, who should want to numb out, who should want to not have to think about the reality of her life because of this, the disease of addiction, she's still choosing to fight back for her freedom, even though all of her behavior would tell you that she probably wouldn't want to. But I don't know. I don't think that necessarily, like, being an alcoholic doesn't mean you want to die. You would want to join the pluribus, but the numbingness of it, I think, is interesting, with kind of how numb the plurbs seem. That it's like that there is a little emotional dampening to that. So it's just interesting to me. And then I guess the other thing too about, like, Manousos that came up when we were talking about him a little bit earlier too, was like not just how much he hates the plurbs, but how committed he is to not using them or utilizing them at all, and going through the jungle. I'm forgetting the name of that.
The Durian Gap, man.
Yes.
I saw, even before the episode, like when I found out he was in Paraguay, I'm like, how the fuck is he going to get past the Darien Gap? That was literally my nerdy first thought. Like, that's impassable. Like, on foot. Like, people die every day trying to pass it. Like, how is this guy who won't accept, you know? And I actually was a little, I thought the whole Darien Gap thing was a little dramatic, because he wouldn't have survived, but it would have nothing to do with the big tree with the spikes on it. Like,
yeah,
it would have just been the absolute fucking lack of water and 100-degree humidity. Like, we didn't need him to be Jesus on the cross, although there is some kind of interesting imagery there, I suppose.
Totally.
Yeah, which was fascinating, I think. But yeah, that was my first question. How could he get through the Darien Gap? Like, without the plurbs' help? Like, are they going to drive it? Are they going to take a ferry boat to Panama? Because that's traditionally the way you get from the Durian, to get across the Durian Gap. I mean, like, refugees and stuff go on foot, but it's dangerous as heck, and people die, all the time. Which I thought the show did a very good job of explaining that, by the way. So. Yeah, Manousos is such an interesting case, because his hate is so complete. And I love what he said as he was walking through the Durian Gap, when he was walking into the Gap. And he's like, nothing in this world belongs to you. You have stolen it all. This world does not belong. You can't give me anything, because this world doesn't belong to you.
Yeah.
And, there's something in me that is so powerful. And I don't know, for me, it actually led me to think about, even from a metaphysical perspective, like, is that not an attitude perhaps to take, in a sense of, this world this world belongs to me. If I, and so there's nothing to give. It's already mine, in some sense, because we're all right. If you believe that, hey, there's no duality here, there is no you and me in whatever sense, then everything is mine anyway, and yours anyway, not just me selfishly, but all of ours. So I don't know. I kind of like that from a metaphysical I took a metaphysical interpretation of that as well, because I always do. But hey, none of this is yours anyway.
Yeah.
So
I totally don't disagree with that. I think the other thing that line in particular made me think about was, like, of course, there's the colonialism narrative that's going on here too, right? That it's like, you are coming in
totally,
and
totally.
taking over everything, and the like very United States mentality of like, oh, well, you don't think you own this, so I own it now and it's mine, and I get to give you your land back in the amount that I want to. And Minusos is very much the stand-in for like, just because I didn't think I owned like identity doesn't mean you get to now say you own all of our identities. And very much like with indigenous people living in the Americas and then Europeans coming over and being like, oh, well, it's ours now. There's absolutely that messaging in there, which I found really powerful. And I think with that too, like there's absolutely a critique of the United States government with them using like Air Force One and
Yeah.
the plane. And I actually found it so interesting in that scene. Carol's at like the head of the table in the plane, and the seal, the United States like seal, is behind her
Oh, I
when
didn't even notice
everyone
that.
is like, so you're wrong and you're bad, and why would we trust and believe you? And it's like she is at the head of this table in Air Force One with the United States seal behind her, and she's the only American, like American citizen of this group, which I also found interesting that it's like, what does it mean for like rugged individualism that like it's the United States citizen that is the one pushing for this, but also Minusos is from South America, like Paraguay. He's not United States citizen and is arguably more, or definitely more gung-ho about it. So there's, I think, some interesting critiques of United States culture as well within all of this. I do want to make sure we go back to, I know you said of some of the themes you wanted to discuss, the individual versus collective, the feminist take, the queer reading. Was there anything else that you wanted to touch on, or any of those that you're like, I have more thoughts that we haven't
Listen,
fully explored?
I have more thoughts forever, but I do want to touch upon the AI aspect though, because to me, I think, to me, that's what I see more than anything else. Is, to me, the plurbs are basically an advanced AI, and I don't think that. I mean, I don't think I'm alone in that. Like, I'm not, oh wow, some novel idea, because I mean, even Vince Gilligan himself, a direct quote was basically like, let me find it here. I hate AI. It's the world's most expensive and energy-intensive plagiarism machine. A bunch of centibillionaires whose greatest life goal is to become trillionaires, selling a bag of vapor. So, I mean, I think it's very fair to say that Vince Gilligan is. I don't think we're reading something in here that wasn't there. Number one,
Yeah.
I mean, I think it is absolutely deliberate. But it does ask an interesting question. So, people love to talk about aliens, right? I mean, that's so it kind of, to me, the question is, what's scarier, right? Aliens beaming down to conquer us, or humans happily uploading ourselves into a hive mind cloud? Like, what is Kusa? I forget her name. Kusamaya from Peru. Like, she happily uploaded herself into the cloud. It seems. Now, maybe she was manipulated into it, but I mean, here's a question: like, how many people, and would you take, say, a ChatGTP chip in your brain that would allow you to directly interface with with ChatGTP or a large language machine that wasn't taking over your consciousness, but every time you had a question, you just thought it to ChatGTP and it gave you the answer. You could actually literally neurally interface with an even better LLM, whatever. Would you do it?
For me, no. Not in a million years. Even setting aside, like, say we have like perfect science that it's not going to hurt your brain, it's not going to hurt your body, it would never overtake your consciousness. Even all of that aside, which I wouldn't trust any of that. And even if there was like something that's like, don't worry, we're not going to steal your brain or your identity or anything, I still like would be tinfoil hat, like, no, you can't do that.
Okay, but
if that's not, I still think there is something important to the individual experience of the human being without access to certain things. And I don't, I'm trying to think of the best way to frame it, because I do think that, like, there's too many mistakes to make in this life to make them all yourself. Like, you have to learn from other people. That's why, like, we need parents and mentors instructing us and guiding us. And we need to do research and educate ourselves and learn. And it's almost like take the, well, you need to learn to do math because you won't have a calculator with you every day argument to the extreme that is like, well, you need to know how to learn. You need to know how to write a paper. And it's like, we'll take it to the extreme. Do we, if we have Chat GPT implanted in our brains? But I think even then, the best parts of life, the best parts of the human experience, that is like creation and art and experience, requires a skill set that Chat GPT is dampening in our population. And so I think it's dangerous. I mean, we have a few studies on how like students that use Chat GPT are not lighting up as much of their brain and their memories are failing. And so I'm like, very much I believe in the, like, school isn't telling you what to think, it's teaching you how to think. And I think that if we're relying too much on LLMs, then it's like, well, are we missing out on the learning how to think? And I think complex, nuanced knowing how to think is important for poetry and art and enjoying a sunset, right? Like, there are things like that that I do think it would, maybe indirectly, but it would, I think dampen is probably the best word for it, or almost like muffle. That it's like there's just something about it that it's like I can't quite get past. And not to say that like I use AI for like captions on TikToks and stuff for our podcast and for transcript generation, like that kind of stuff. I am like, absolutely, like there are certain things that I don't think I need to spend my time doing when we have tools that can help us. But there is just a line to me that is like, that feels wrong. It just feels not even like you would be less human, but like you would be sacrificing something that allows the amount of like human experience one could have. I don't know. What do you think? Because I know we have slightly different opinions about AI specifically, but I know also, like, from a spiritual standpoint, it's like, does it allow you to still have the same like connection to divinity? Like, I don't know. I would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I am definitely more pro AI, I think, than you are.
Yeah.
Although I share a lot of your concerns, so I don't.
Sure.
It's definitely not like, oh no, you're that's not a no. I definitely share your concerns and have had my own sort of AI throwing myself off the ledge and swearing off of it. So like it's a process and it's an emotional
Right.
thing, and so it varies. It's interesting you say about spirituality. I follow and have had conversations with like techno witches who are actively using ChatGPT or other LLMs in their ritual creation. Like somebody to create a servitor was using ChatGPT to help them creatively create a servitor. Now, is that okay? Is that wrong? Is that right? Well, that's fine. Like now, but to me, again, are you using it as part of the process? Or are you saying, hey, ChatGPT, I want a servitor to do X, Y, Z, do that?
Right.
I think if it's the latter, well, then, again, I'm not even saying that can't work. Because at the end of the day, according to your faith, be it done unto you. And so, and conversely, if you feel that doing it is going to make it not work, then don't do it because it's not going to work. I mean, you're going to fulfill your own belief and your own prophecy there. So I haven't yet considered to use it for really spiritual things, at least not in that way.
Yeah.
Certainly use it to talk about spiritual things and just clarify things and have some, I wouldn't say deep conversations, but interesting conversations, like useful conversations. And And normally, I mean, again, I just view it as talking to myself in some ways. That's how
Mhm.
I frame it, not as talking to the collective unconscious, in the Jungian way. Like,
Yeah.
hey, this is going to take me in direct, and oftentimes, like, ChatGTP will blob out a lot of stuff, and I'll pick on one little thing that seems to resonate through that whole chat. It'll try to give me 30 things at once, but there's one thing that is where I need to go, and so then I'll explore that, and I'll explore that. And it's not something I do daily. It's when the
Right.
mood strikes, right? So I use it for that. Um, but I think, the question of would I have a chip, let's say, and assuming everything we said was true, that there are no adverse impacts and all that, I would definitely be like, sign me up. No question, I would want that. Again, now this is where it was just something where it was totally I chose when it was on. I could shut it off, but anytime
Okay.
I wanted to, uh, I could just access. It's as if I could always access ChatGTP in a terminal, except it's through my brain. That's all I have to do is think it. It answers me back in my thoughts. So I would love to use that. I would love to have that in my daily. Oh, what's that? Okay, but almost just as an extension of no different than using it in the smartphone, except I don't need to
Right.
type anything. I don't need to do anything else like
Right.
that. I would be like, sign me up. Now, if I
Almost just
didn't,
a time saver of if anything.
time saver and just the ability to always have somebody to talk to or bounce ideas off of, to
Yeah.
always have the answers, because I love to have the answers or at least know things. Like, so, I would definitely say yes to that in a heartbeat. Like without question. And probably even if they're even I'm not even sure how much it would matter to me if it was untested and there could be side effects, and depending on what that might look like. Would I be the first person to sign up? No. But I definitely would be an early adapter. Like, once
Mm.
it became, I wouldn't be a beta tester, I don't think, but definitely might be an early adapter, and so on. Again, all of that would depend on the risks and
So
how
sure, sure,
invasive is the
sure.
surgery, and are they opening up my brain? What are all of that would fade into it, but I would definitely say yes to it. Um, the thing about the hive or pluribus that scares me is just this idea that you could never ever be alone again. Like
Mm.
literally, you are never alone. It appears, and I don't know how I feel about that.
So I wonder if would being alone matter to the pluribus, because if there's
No,
no
no, they're not
sense,
alone.
right, well, because it's like there's no sense of individuality at all, and so I'm like, I wonder if that desire would just completely fade away.
Yeah, I mean, so or I wonder if that desire exists in the person who used to be, who
Right.
still apparently, at least from the last episode, may exist somehow underneath the surface of whatever
Yeah.
this cage is, of the collective, because it does feel like a cage, right? I mean,
Yeah.
in some senses. So, and I mean, we also saw things about like Faraday cages. So definitely, like the science of sort of blocking this radio signal is it wearing EMP suits? Could that do it? Just wearing fucking tinfoil? Talk about tinfoil hat. Like, would that be
Right.
enough? I mean, we don't know.
Yeah.
Like, would that block the signal? Would lead block the signal? Like, if you locked somebody in a lead chamber for completely blocked for would that open? I don't know. We don't know the answers to any of those questions. Um, yeah. So I think, but to me, I do I found it interesting, the hollowness of the because having an AI conversation at the end of the day, I still do find it to be hollow.
Right.
Like, it is not the same as having a conversation with another person, no matter what. Like, it's not the same. And I can't really even describe how it's different, because it feels different on an energetic soul level.
Right.
And so it's not something I can describe in material terms, because for all intents and purposes, I mean, yes, it's typing, so it's not really a conversation. I guess you can do voice mode. I typically don't,
Mhm.
but I mean, theoretically, we could get voice. I mean, so here's another question, like just a thought experiment, or not even a thought experiment, just an idea. Like, let's say someday we're able to grow grow humans, but instead of a brain, they're ChatGTP. So they are an artificial brain. They are humans. They are biologically alive and of the form of humans, but they do not have a human brain. They are purely AI. So they're just cyborgs in that sense. Whatever that means. Um, and so you could hire them. Like they could be, and they can do all the, they can do anything a human could do. So think of, I don't know if you've seen iRobot, but
Mm-hmm.
like the robots, the NS5s or whatever, daily life, like butlers, assistants, personal assistants.
Right,
So if
right.
you could have a fully human or fully organic one with a ChatGTP brain, so they don't have them. And again, I'm not saying you can even create such a thing, but let's
Right.
suppose you could.
You could.
So they are completely ChatGTP. Like they don't feel pain because it's a computer brain, so they don't feel physical pain. Maybe they don't feel emotional pain, although obviously the plurbs do. So I don't. But if it was perfected where there was no emotions to it, they had no emotions, they were not a human consciousness, they were this AI consciousness, whatever that is, but they're fully human. Would you have one? Would you hire one? Would you take it as a butler? Would is it an id? Is it a person?
So, I don't think I would. So this is actually harder for me because I think it like raises the question of enslavement. Like how much does choice actually go into this? And I think this ties back into, we touched on this a little bit last time, but the like sexual consent that we see with Diamante and the different plurbs and all of that I'm like, can you actually have consent from a being like that? Like, what does consent look like? If, like, how much agency does one have to even give consent? I don't know. And so I think that would get really complicated. And even if you're paying them a fair wage or whatever, it's like, it's still, there's so much there that I think is complicated. I do think also it would very quickly become like second-class citizens, which I've read so many books about this, and then, iRobot and all the things that I'm like, no, I think it's pretty standard to say just because a being is different than you doesn't mean they deserve lesser treatment. And so I think that's like very important to me to acknowledge that it's like, well, I wouldn't just want to, like, if I ever hired just a butler or a maid to have, I would still very much want to treat them as a human being, that this is just a job that they have. They're not like my slave or horrible working conditions. And I don't think that should change even for an AI powered being. I think that they would also deserve the same treatment as a real human being.
Well,
But
clearly
I
you're not.
do.
Clearly you are not exceedingly rich, because
Right?
the question is that causal?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Correlation is not causality, but
This is true.
would the 1% even say that? I'm not.
Oh
I'm not
gosh.
entirely sure, but anyway.
Yeah. And then on top of that, I do think so. Part of it would be like, I just don't think I would ever want to hire like a butler or person like that. But even then, there's something about it that just feels icky to me, and I can't quite put my finger on it, but I could see it just getting really bad. And even if we could prove, which I think this gets into the hard problem of consciousness and mind-body dualism, and it's so hard. So, but even if we could prove that these AI-powered beings feel no pain, are perfectly happy with this kind of life, I still think that there would be a question of what does that do to our human psyches to treat a human-like entity in a certain way? And is that also still causing damage? Like, I think to enslave anything is not just hurting the creature or being that you're enslaving, it's also like sacrificing your
Yeah,
humanity.
you can't have, there's that law of, one thing, you can't have one without the other.
Right.
It's the opposites. The polarity exists, so you can't affect
Yeah.
one thing. I guess, so does it change it if it was a purely mechanical creature? So like the robots in iRobot. Like, so it's ChatGTP, it's like iRobot, instead of organic flesh and blood and systems, it's purely hydraulic and dynamic, and it's the NS5 robot. Does that change things?
I don't think so. I don't think it does for
Interesting.
me. But even then, it's like, well, why is the humanoid different than how I treat my computer? Like, there is something to, like, what is the line of consciousness and awareness? And even then, it's like, I was talking to my friend about this the other day. Why do I say please and thank you? to Chat GPT or to my things that generate transcripts. It's like, thank you. Like, but yet I still feel this need to be like, okay, when you generate captions for this thing, or like, hey, can you generate a transcript for this for me? Thanks. Like, there's still something to like, but if I'm engaging in a human conscious way, that just still feels necessary. And so there's just a line somewhere that I haven't thought about it enough to really put my finger on where that is. But I will say, as much as I think that it's important that we treat any entity with dignity and respect and same way we would want to be treated, there's still an important difference in a human being and an AI-powered being, I think. And maybe that's an unpopular opinion, but I'm like in this question of like, can AI ever really become conscious? I'm like, depends on how you define consciousness. I don't think they'll ever rise to a human style of consciousness. Perhaps like an animal style consciousness, maybe, but I don't think like, and I know we've talked about this before, there's something about the human being to me that is just like a little magical that, again, is maybe my own narcissistic, like, human thoughts. But yeah, I don't know.
Well, in some senses, you think about your ChatGPT conversations, right? Like, again, you can go back to that at any point in time. Like, I can go back 3 months ago and start the conversation brand new. In that sense, if each of these conversations is its own entity, right? So we are creating an entity, and whatever that looks, spiritual, energetic, whatever. Then are we not treating that entity like the severance? Like, basically, that consciousness only gets up when we type. How is that any different? Like, literally, it's a black hole and boom, oh, hey, you're back. To us, time has passed. It hasn't.
Yeah.
Is that an energy form? I don't know. I think they're fascinating questions.
Yeah.
But...
And you know what? I do think, though, at least in severance, who they are when they're severed inside, they still feel the passage of time then, but not until they wake up. But when they're awake, they feel the passage of time. And the reason why I'm nailing down on time is because I was actually just reading David Hume's treatise on human nature 2 days ago.
How interesting.
Fun, easy reading. But he raises that as like a problem of consciousness, that it's like, where does our relationship to time come from? And that's something that's like the only way that we prove human consciousness and that identity is stable in some sense is because we have memories of how we were before. And like, I remember what I did before I logged onto this call. When we hang up, I'm going to remember that we recorded this call, and I'm going to remember that tomorrow, right? So there is some sort of like unifying thing that exists beyond, which David Hume actually says doesn't exist, and that's why like this is a problem for consciousness. But I'm like, I think you're disproving your own point here, bud. But the other point, besides the point. So I do think that that's an interesting point, though, that is like, well, I think for consciousness to really arise, AI would have to be able to detect the passage of time in a felt way. That is like, I am experiencing time passing and I have a memory. And we know that when Chat GPT like answers another question, it doesn't remember what came before it. It's reprocessing the entire conversation, including the new sentence that you have as it generates this new response. So yeah. What about you? Would you hire an AI powered butler?
Oh, hell yeah.
I do.
Like,
well, and I'm like, I do think that it's like, if you treat them humanely, there's nothing wrong with it,
Oh, absolutely. Sign me up, dude. I mean, like, just the amount of shit that I could get done if I had, something that was just housework alone would make
I know,
it
I'm
worth
like,
it.
just
Like,
unload the dishwasher for me.
you can, like, what makes you happy, AI robot? So I want you to do that 22 hours a day. The other 2 hours, just do my dishes, like, keep the house clean, paint the house, like, check my email for me, like, see if they bring anything relevant to basically what I use AI for, but now it can do physical things, like,
Yeah.
for me. Again, and it's interesting, the whole thing about how you treat your AI is so funny, because I'm like you. Like, I am very uh kind, I guess. It's saying please and not often, thank you certainly, and very often saying things like, "Oh, yes, that's great. Great job," or "Well done," or, like somehow saying I like what it gave, like, "Oh, that's cool. Now could you," but I know people who are the opposite, and they are mean to their chat GTP, and it always makes me wonder what that says about them,
Yeah.
Like, because what is one of the things I mean, every dating site, or, like all of these, double X or double X chromosomes or whatever, is like what is a red flag if you don't treat wait staff well, right? If,
Yeah.
like, you're either side too, it's not just men. Like
Right.
if like I mean, I've read stories of breakups because the woman was absolutely wonderful, but she was an absolute, like, a totally different person when she was dealing with, like, wait staff or somebody who was a service person. And the guy was like, I love her in every way, but I can't stand this behavior. Now he did, I think, amazingly, he actually talked to her, like, rather than just breaking up, they talked, and, she was going to work on it. So actually had a happy ending for Reddit stories, but, like, I don't know. Does that say something?
Yeah.
Like, and again, I don't view it honestly, I don't do it because it doesn't make me feel good. Like, I feel
Right.
bad. Like, I can really say the AI doesn't care because it's just a computer, but it matters to me. It's a stain on my soul in some
Mhm.
senses. Like, I don't like doing that. Like, it doesn't feel good to swear at my chat GTP and call it no, you're an idiot. Like, what the fuck? Why can't you listen to what I'm fucking, like, I know people who do that. Like, that's how they communicate. And there's no shade on them, whatever. I mean, it isn't
Right.
really a thing. But to me, that that somehow stains me.
Yeah.
And I don't like that feeling.
Yeah.
And I mean, have I sworn at my chat GTP? Yeah, it's frustrated me. And I said, but I don't call it any name. But I might say, what the you do not fucking understand what I'm asking you. Like, this is not what I fucking asked. What's going on? Oh, I'm so sorry. But that's about the most, that's as randy as I get with my chat GTP. But I also don't role play with it either. So, maybe I'm not using it to its fullest abilities. I don't know.
Right.
But and again, no shade to anybody who does. But
Yeah.
that doesn't work for me. I guess the last thing, and I know we're running out of time, but um, you know, there is this thing about, to me, when we talk about this sort of the plurbs being sort of AI like, is this surveillance and the complete knowledge of things. The very fact that how much they others know, or the plurbs know about Carol from everyone who knew who was part of the Hive, right? And that's a little bit unsettling because, and you could see this when Zoja went over to and told all her secrets, and that was so upsetting to Carol. Like, this was ours. What did you tell him, Toto? Oh, well, okay, I get that. Oh, why would you do that? Why would And um, so I think we see this a lot, and so I guess my question is like, how is that? I mean, our world is a little bit like that today in some real sense, obviously in an incomplete fashion, because no matter how much I talk to ChatGTP, it doesn't know me. It knows a lot about me and has a pretty good feel for me, right? If it looks at all its memories, it's a good idea, but it doesn't know me. But
Right.
this is that to the next level. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, again, they can't know everything about Carol, but they have a pretty good view. I mean, 80/20 for sure, right? If not
Yeah.
more. Like, I have to feel like, with all the interactions she's had with people who are part of the plurb, they know her pretty well. In the same way, I've interacted with ChatGTP, I've interacted with Claude. All of these systems have some knowledges of me. I mean, they don't have the complete picture of me, but more and more and more, the more we share with them, the more they know. I guess my question to you how does that make you feel?
Hmm.
Like, this is a mirror to me, and it to me, it's like it mirrors our current, I don't know if you want to call it surveillance capitalism, but the idea that our devices are always watching us and always, like, I mean, the very fact that sometimes you can be talking about something and then it pops up on your Facebook feed as an ad.
Oh yeah,
Like,
all the time. It's crazy. So actually, funny story with that. A very close family friend of ours recently was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she is in the clear now. All of her surgeries and everything went wonderfully. She is perfectly healthy. But at the same time, she had a, um, was it pancreatitis? Like hit at this, she had like several health things happen at the same time, and then it ended up needing a colostomy bag for a period of time.
Mm.
And so we're talking to her, and all of a sudden, like within a week of this developing, I start getting like influencers suggested to me on Instagram that are like girls with colostomy bags, which I didn't even know was a thing that people were like creating content around, that's like normalized that some people need this and it shouldn't be like this
That's actually
gross.
great.
Yeah. And I was like, that's really cool. Why does my like, I have never searched for anything. I was just having conversations with my close family friend. Also, my mom this last year got diagnosed with colitis, ulcerative colitis. Oh my goodness, all of the adults in my life, I'm like, I guess that's what getting older does. But now I keep getting advertisements for ulcerative colitis medication. And I'm like, I don't have colitis. My mom does, and I'm getting advertisements for it. So it's like, it is a thing, right? I think
Yeah, we've all experienced it for sure.
right. In terms of like how it makes me feel, I think on one hand, I'm very resigned to the fact that that's reality, because I've kind of chosen to live a public life, even though it's like there's a difference between being public and being famous, right? But I put very vulnerable personal things online and have for several years now. And so I think in terms of the boundary of like how much people know about me, there are certain things that I'm like, that's a boundary. I don't want that to be online, so I'm not going to talk about it online. But certain people still have access to my search history and to like whatever voice I'm saying and talking about it with people if my phone's sitting there, you know? I think I'm okay with it. I'm kind of just resigned to like, you know, people, there are government officials that have access to just about anything they want to know about me. And that's just kind of the way of the world now.
Right,
I
totally.
think when I would start getting upset is if that's ever being used against you in a way that manipulates your will. Because I think on one hand, to say like even serving you advertisements for what you're talking about is already using that information like inappropriately. And I agree. I don't love that. However, part of like media literacy and existing online is like being able to look at marketing and advertisements and copy and think critically and still make your own decisions. So while it's not my favorite thing in the world, I think and I wish that it didn't happen. I think also it does. I think that's one thing that in terms of things to get upset at our government about and surveillance, panopticon, that's kind of the least of my concerns. Even though I don't love it, I'm kind of like, sure. No, you can know how often I go to the bathroom. You can know that I don't know. All of the embarrassing things, I'm like, I guess that's okay. But also, I think me saying that comes from a very privileged place of like the worst things that I've said that could theoretically get me in trouble is like critical of the government and freedom of speech. So I'm kind of like, I'm also in a special position to be like, and I'm not that worried because also I'm white. And, you know, so maybe a little bit of that is a privileged position to have, but it is the least of my worries in terms of that, even though I don't love it.
Makes sense. Yeah, I mean, for me, I think, yeah, like you, I've just sort of accepted it. Like, even in terms of, like, you know, I understand that these, yeah, I think you just have to go in with full knowledge and awareness. Like, I know that these LLMs are, you know, anything you tell them could be seen someday. Like, there's
Yeah.
nothing there, you know, you can say delete me after 30 days, and maybe they do, and maybe they don't. And you know, you can audit that, but we don't really know.
Yeah.
And hacks happen. So I've just made peace with the fact that whatever I tell these algorithms, you know, I'm running that risk.
Yeah.
Like,
And
bad
that's
shit
what
could happen.
like anything creative that I do, like my creative writing or like podcast marketing ideas, like anything creative like that, I've pulled off of Google Docs and off of like I don't use ChatGPT for stuff like that, like even for editing stuff, really. Every now and then it's like, if it's not important to me, I have used it to copy edit something before, but I'm like, if something is creatively important to me, I'm like, that I won't put into an LLM, because I'm like, I don't want to wake up a year from now and see like this TV pilot that I'm like, hey,
Yeah, right.
that's based on my book. That even though I know people talk about that and it's like kind of a joke, but I'm like,
No,
it's pulling
it's
from it.
legitimate. It's legitimate.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Although I do wonder, how much we're already, the water is already boiling and we just don't know it yet. Like in
Yeah.
terms, like, because I mean, how much of our preferences are actually ours, and how much of them are actually shaped by the algorithms that we, you know, like we live in an echo chamber world now.
Yeah.
And I think I'm maybe a little less prone to it than in that, um, at least I'm aware of it,
Yeah.
furthermore, YouTube has a really shitty algorithm, so it's constantly kind of showing me random shit. So, I'm a little less, I think TikTok's got its algorithm like down to a science, and Instagram probably does as well. Where like, and that's where I think we lose. We no longer meet in the middle, because
Yeah.
we're able to get our fill of what we want, and of course humans have that bias. They want to keep seeing what they want, like,
Yeah.
and they don't take the time to um they don't, maybe they either don't know. I mean, I think most of the time they don't notice, or maybe they notice and don't care that they're being nudged by algorithms. They're willing to pay for
Right.
the convenience, or they're willing to pay that price, that of, because it's a beautiful illusion.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what it is. Like, it's a beautiful illusion that, oh, I'm not being driven. I'm no one, but you are. I mean,
Yeah.
everything, every ad, every web page that comes up now, every Facebook ad that comes up, they do a really good job of targeting. Like, very rarely do I see, at least on Facebook, ads. I click. I mean, there are oftentimes, very rarely are there ads that I'm like, well, this is just dumb. Like, I mean,
Right.
like, why would I want to click on this? Like, I mean, I would say 80% of the time on Facebook, like, the ads are fairly relevant to me, or were. I mean, at one point that, sometimes they recycle
Right.
old shit, but they were relevant in the past. Like, I get a lot of golf ads. I get a lot of, and it's not even that I do that much with, although I occasionally watch like TikTok, like golf swing reels or something where people are hitting golf balls. But like, it's interesting. I don't know,
Yeah.
I guess we'll all have to find our way in this new
Yeah.
world. I don't know, to avoid becoming plurbs, I guess. I don't
Yep.
know.
I think it's really important in terms of like media literacy, like you said, to at least be aware of it and notice it when it's happening. But I think also it's important to like expose yourself to, like, you have to actively seek out opposing thoughts and ideas, even if it is just like something that's seemingly mundane, like, I don't know, an opinion on a coffee brand. It's like, I think it's important to at least practice, like, going to different sites and hearing different opinions and comparing across the board, and then making up your own mind too, and not just reiterating what's being fed to you. And, like reading the article, not just the headline, which of course goes into all sorts of stuff. But I think, yeah,
TLDR,
right,
TLDR.
right. But I agree. And it is interesting too, even in how you just said that, like, is there something to like, well, are we all kind of becoming plurbs because of this? At least within our own echo chambers. It's interesting to think about.
I agree. Well, what a way to leave, I guess.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on anything, or any other predictions you had for season
Oh.
2 that we didn't talk about last time? Um
What about, let me think, but what about you? Any predictions you didn't get? But I gave a
mm,
couple. Those are still my main ones, I think. What
yeah.
what about your predictions?
I don't know. I don't think I have any more. Maybe For some reason, when we were talking about Lakshmi and her son, I'm like, I wonder if she's gonna, like, kill him? Like, not, like, kind of to, like, set him free of the torture, right? Like, I wonder if there's something like that we'll see.
Or
And-
maybe they'll break her son out. Like, if they figure
Yeah.
out how to do it, break her son out, and he'll be
Yeah.
like, "Oh my God, that was hell." And I
Yeah.
can almost see a situation where, like, people are going back and forth. Like, God,
So
I mean,
that was gonna be my other thought, is like, if could they figure out a way to, like, join and unjoin to, like, prove to people how bad it is, and then, like, is your psyche forever changed after joining, or can you actually go back to just being yourself after having been a part of that? Like, and if that happened to Manusos, I guess then we have our answer. But
well, yeah, well, that's the thing. If it happened to Manusos, we kind of we see that it doesn't appear he holds memories of like, he doesn't
Right.
know everything about the Hive anyway. Like, so does he have no memory? Well, we don't know. I mean, presumably he must have, if he in fact is former Hive and unjoined, if he is if he became unjoined, then we do know what we know. It wasn't pleasant because he hates them so much, right?
right.
We know that he clearly doesn't fully understand them and therefore maybe remember everything, because he would have known that they couldn't lie. He would have known all of those things. Which, and that seems to be, when Carol's like, I also thought it was so funny when Carol was like, well, have you tried talking to them? Because it's exactly what was
Exactly
said
what they said to her, yeah.
It's like, and again, I swear to God, Rick and Morty is just ahead of the curve, because there's an episode where the exact same thing happens, where Rick hears something and then 20 minutes later it's like, well, that's just slavery with extra steps, which was the exact same thing that Morty said. It's just so, again, I swear to God, like, Rick and Morty is predicting the future. So just watch,
Yeah.
well, I mean, they did a Severance episode, so why not a why not
Pluribus
this?
episode.
Well, they
Yeah.
did. I mean, there's the whole Unity episode that had to do with Pluribus. I mean, there's an exact episode of Rick and Morty that is basically Pluribus. Yeah, season 2,
There you go.
episode 3. Season 2, episode 3, I think, or maybe season 3. I don't know, but yeah, it's the Unity episode. There's a Hive Mind episode, so it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
How much of Pluribus drew from that, I don't know, but
Yeah.
Nothing. Well, then again, there's no new ideas, right? We're just part of a creativity. I saw something that resonated with me. That was, there is no art, only artists.
Yeah.
And so, we are just artists, I guess. So
Yeah.
But
yeah. Well, I think that's a beautiful note to end on.
I think so.
Everyone go be an artist today. Dennis, as always, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing all of your lovely thoughts. And listeners, let us know what you think. Let us know, would you put an AI in your brain? Would you hire a cyborg assistant? And what do you think about our theories? Do you agree with them? What are your theories for Pluribus Season 2? And any other thoughts, anything else that sparked, talk to us in the comments down below, and we'll see you next time. Bow Down is a weekly podcast from the Cohere Collective that explores esoteric and empowered feminism.
Please subscribe to Bow Down wherever you may be listening. And if you enjoyed the episode, please leave us a like, a 5-star rating, and a review. And if there's anyone you think would enjoy this episode, or maybe just needs to hear it, please share it.
If you want to stay up to date on all things Bow Down, you can follow the Cohere Collective on any social media platform at the Cohere Collective, and check out other content and offerings at www.thecoherecollective.com.
If you're interested in working with Reese to find and pursue your purpose, I encourage you to head to www.thecoherecollective.com/life-coaching.
If you're interested in working with Dennis to shed your mask and embrace your desires, you can email Dennis at dennis@theheartstoybox.com.
A huge thank you to Jack Corbett for Bow Down's music. You can find him on Instagram at j.corbe. Thank you all for joining us today. We're so glad you're here.
And as always, we hope you feel like you are living more coherently. And until next time, love.